In this video, we would be discussing a very epic battle happened between Praggnanandhaa versus Magnus Carlsen from the Norway Chess 2024 round number 3. And it's a classical game with 2 hours each, and after first 40 moves, both the players will get increment of 30 seconds each. So already the game is simply mind-blowing, so I don't want to waste any further time, so let's start. So Praggnanandhaa is playing with the white pieces and he opens the game with 1 e4. Magnus replies with c5, knight f3, e6, the Sicilian defense, d4, takes, a6, and now we have the Khan variation of the Sicilian defense, bishop to d3, queen to c7, and a very good thing about bishop d3 here is, like if white starts with knight c3, maybe there is some kind of bishop b4 which is very annoying for white. So that's the reason, first playing bishop d3, queen c7, short castle, knight to f6, queen to e2, both the players just going with their own preparation, d6, c4, pushing up the pawn, grabbing more space in the center, and now the idea is to play the move knight to c3, knight to d7, knight to c3, knight to e5, h3 by white. h3 is a move that is pretty flexible in these types of position because white wants to play bishop e3, but there are some sort of knight g4 attacking the bishop, so that's why first playing h3, getting rid of backrank checkmates and also covering the g4 square. b6, f4 now. So after f4, you can already sense the idea of h3. If h3 was not have been played, maybe knight g4 would have been an option, but after f4 now, knight into bishop, takes, and now we have the move bishop to b7. So till now everything is pretty fine, both the players are going with their preparation. But okay, Praggnanandhaa is having 1 hour 20 minutes on his clock, whereas Magnus is having 1 hour 40 minutes. We have f5 by Praggnanandhaa already. So he's already striking in the center on the pawn on e6. So now Magnus played queen to d7, which was the first mistake of the game, or I would say inaccuracy. The best move would have been to play e5, attacking the knight, kicking the knight back because to c2, because now white's idea is to play knight e3 to d5, and still white is pretty comfortable in this position after rook c8, knight e3, bishop e7. But the whole point here is indeed that white is having more space, d6 pawn is a backward pawn, but at the same time e4 pawn is also a bit weak, c4 pawn is also a bit weak, though it can't really be captured, but still it's a weakness. And whereas if white tries to go for something like knight c to d5, centralizing the knight, it's not really working because after simply takes, you can already sense the position is extremely solid now, and now black is the one having the control of the c5 and black is even slightly better. So that's why it's not really so much easy for white to continue. But first Magnus played queen to d7, not going to really push the pawn to e5, he basically doesn't want it a backward pawn. So bishop to g5 now, bishop to e7, rook to d1, and now Magnus played rook to c8, which I believe is the second inaccuracy. He should have simply played short castle, and it is simply a fine position. But rook c8, the advantage of rook c8 here is a very interesting move. You can try to pause the video and try to find the move. Okay, so after rook c8, the best move in this position that also happened in the game was queen to e2, and the idea is pretty interesting. The whole point here is now e5 is extremely strong. For example, now if black tries to simply short castle, e5, a very strong move, and after e5, white side is already to capture the pawn on e6, followed by capturing the pawn on d6, and just simply chop off the pawn on e6. So basically many things are happening up. So basically if you try to capture the pawn now, already knight into e6, attacking the queen and also winning the rook. So that is the whole idea. Short castle is already an inaccuracy or a mistake in this position. So that's why e5 is kind of forced moves, because white's e5 is coming up very strong, so you have to play e5 himself. And now Praggnanandhaa simply chopped off the knight on f6, takes knight c2. So now what Praggnanandhaa is saying to Carlsen in this position here is that you are having the bishop pair, but at the same time the position is extremely closed, so which is favorable to my knights compared to your bishop. So already speaking up, white is already better because At the same time, d6 pawn is also a backward pawn and a weakness at the same time. So on knight c2, queen to c6, idea is to capture the pawn. So knight to e3, bishop to g5. Now the idea is to simply chop off the knight, followed by capturing the pawn on c4. So here, Praggnanandhaa first played king to h1, simply moving the king. The best move would have been to simply play knight e to d5, and the idea is already very interesting. You allow your opponent to capture the pawn on c4, or else white can play b3 on the next move, and white is already very comfortable. So you have to capture the pawn, and now white is already having a very strong move, which is queen to g4, attacking the bishop, and at the same time, some ideas with knight b6 attacking the queen and the rook. Kicking the bishop to h6, because bishop f6 may allow some takes, queen going into the idea. So that's why I guess bishop h6, but now there is rook f2. You can't really capture because queen c5 check and you lose the knight. So first rook f2, and now simply f6 is coming in, and white is basically, like, black is a pawn up, but too much weaknesses. Black is not really having a good side to castle on, and already you can say white is better. So that's the whole reason knight e to d5 would have been the best, but we have king to h1, which is also fine. Bishop e3, queen e3, and now we have f6. If you play queen c4, it's not really working this time because of f6. You push and you can simply chop off the pawn on b6. This pawn is also hanging, so for example, let's say bishop takes, queen d6, and it's already a mate in 4. Like queen e7 is coming, queen d7, the game is over. So that's why f6 first, and now simply b3. b5, you can't capture the pawn because the knight would be hanging. So first knight to d5, and now we have queen to c5. So Magnus' idea here is, the only idea here is, he wants to trade off the queen because now he's already having a bad position. The king is in the center, and there is no way for the black king to go, because anywhere he goes, black king is going to remain extremely unsafe. If you try to capture the pawn on c4, white can simply capture the pawn back, takes, and now rook c1. Simply takes, and now queen b3. You can't really castle because I can simply play my rook c1. Like, there are no good discoveries. So first rook c1, and basically, let's say king h8, already queen b8. You can say basically black is extremely passive, white is the only one having a huge amount of counterplay and a winning position. So that's why queen to c5 was played. But now simply queen f3, keeping the queens on the board. Takes, and now simply check, and now rook f3. So Praggnanandhaa is like, I don't really care about my pawns because I'm simply going for your king. In the game we had bishop d5. If black captures the pawn, white can simply play rook c3, capture the rook, and simply capture the b3 pawn. And the whole idea here is, the rook on h8 is simply a dead piece, and you can eventually say that white is a complete rook up because the rook on h8 can't really join the party. So already rook c1 and the game is over. So that's why we had bishop into d5, rook d5, queen move, and now simply takes. Rook takes, and now rook b3. Rook to b4, and now simply rook to d3. Now his idea here is, he wants to capture the rook and then play rook b3. So we have takes, and now queen c7, guarding the b8 square. But now simply queen to d1. Praggnanandhaa realizes that the queen on h5 is not really doing much, so it's better to first pull the queen back. The idea is to play queen to d5, rook b7, and the game is over. So first now g6 by Magnus, the only try that he can do. His idea here is king g7 and try to get the rook into the game and somehow survive, but simply queen b1. And now the idea is to simply play if king to g7, rook b7, and you lose the queen. So Magnus first played queen c5, and now his idea is to play king to g7. So first Praggnanandhaa played rook b7, cutting off the king and basically forcing the king to remain on the 8th rank so that black can't really get the rook in. So now simply takes, and now simply king to h2, a fantastic and a brilliant move by Praggnanandhaa. The whole idea here is white wants to play queen b3, but then there is some queen c1 checks and a perpetual idea. So first what Praggnanandhaa did was simply first played king h2 prophylaxis, simply move the king, and now queen b3 is extremely strong. So rook to g8, simply queen b3, threatening mate in 1. So d5 was played, but simply rook into h7. Now there is a mate. If you try to stop the mate, I can capture the pawn, maybe queen a3. Like if you stop it, queen a3 is still a mate. It's game over. So that's why after rook into h7 on the move number 37, Magnus Carlsen with the black pieces decided to resign the game. And we have the champion of the round number 3, Praggnanandhaa, who was able to successfully beat Magnus Carlsen in the classical game. So it was a perfect game, I would say, played by Praggnanandhaa to beat Magnus Carlsen. I'm not sure what happened in the game, but Magnus made quite a few inaccuracies and mistakes. And Praggnanandhaa very well capitalized on those mistakes and was able to win the game. So guys, that's it for today. This game was already very interesting, and if you had fun or learned anything new today, make sure to like the video, share this video with everyone, and make sure to subscribe to our channel if you are new to our channel. It's free for you, but it helps us to motivate to make more videos like this. So I'm going to see you soon. So till then, stay tuned and keep watching OneShot Chess.